This is one of a series of videos from People's Trust for Endangered Species on how to undertake a box check for the National Dormouse Monitoring Programme, and it deals with how to complete a risk assessment. What would you do if one of your volunteers was having a heart attack or perhaps was hurt by a falling tree? For any event that you run with volunteers, you need to consider the possible risks that they may encounter and how you might be able to get help if you need it. When completing a risk assessment, it is a good idea to start with the basics. Where will you be in the woods? Is there enough detail for an ambulance to get to you? And don't forget, it might be you who has the accident, and it may be fellow organisers and volunteers that have to use the information. You will also need the contact details of the organiser and where the closest hospital is located. Next, you need to identify potential dangers. Generally, there are two types: generic, that apply to all woodlands, such as branches on paths and slippery tracks, and others that are more specific to your woodland, such as a pond or an old mine site. When a potential risk is identified, then a list of precautions that could be taken or are already in place should be listed. For example, with slips and trips, the list could include wearing appropriate footwear and taking extra care on muddy terrain. From here, you can move on to determining the likelihood of the hazard, and its possible severity can be assessed on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being the lowest score and 3 being the highest score. Continuing with our earlier example of slips and trips, such occurrences are likely but not inevitable, so they would score a 2 for likelihood of occurrence. If they do happen, they are likely to have little effect, or at worst cause only a minor injury, and so they would score 1 for the severity of hazard. Next, the likelihood and severity scores are multiplied together to give an overall risk score. 1 or 2 is low priority, 3 or 4 is moderate priority, and 5 to 9 is a very high priority. Items with a high risk score will require additional steps to reduce the risks. Include the basics, the precise location, the organiser, and emergency contact details. Identify risks and plan to mitigate those risks. Determine the likelihood of occurrence and level of severity ratings. Calculate risk levels and establish further controls for high risk scores.